President Barrow says Gambia is on course to host the 2022 OIC summit as he meets the OIC officials in Mecca. WHO's Director General warns against complacency over the new COVID-19 Delta variant. And Gambia's Chief of Defense Staff advises the military to desist from politics while serving in uniform. Well, these and more coming your way in this week. Hello there, this is Africa TV. Many thanks for joining us. I am Amadou Kante, and now the news in detail. And we begin with matters of the presidency, because President Adama Barrow has informed the Secretary General of the OIC Summit that the Gambia's hosting OIC Summit is on course. The Secretary General of the OIC made this remark shortly after meeting with President Barrow. Our reporter Omar Ahmad Toure has more details of that in this report.
The Gambia is set to take over chairmanship of Organization of Islamic Cooperation from Saudi Arabia when it hosts the world's biggest Islamic convergence by June next year. On Saturday, President Adam Barrow holds audience with OIC Secretary General Hissem Brahim Taha in Jeddah. The center of discussion between the two leadership is updates on the upcoming Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit in the Gambia. The Secretary General of the Islamic Organization, Hissem Brahim Taha, explains.
We talk about the arrangement of how to organize the summit. We have a focal point in both sides, so we make it as smooth as possible. Mr. President emphasized the importance that the stay of the king, emirs, and the president to be as pleasant as possible. He assured me that the infrastructure almost completed and everything is ready, and try to prioritize what is important for Ummah with regard to the COVID, with regard to terrorism, with regard to education, with regard to investment, with regard to peace and security, and of course for the summit, inshallah.
Quite often, Islam is linked to extremist and terrorist movements, even though the vast majority of Muslims reject such movements. Muslim states play critical roles as strategic partners in the fight against such groups. The Secretary General highlights OIC's position on terrorism.
We talk about the Ummah issues, especially peace and security, fighting terrorism. I told him the position of OIC that it's against all of the terrorist acts, no matter what. And there is no excuse for terrorism, no matter what. Terrorism is terrorism. And this doesn't represent Islam. Terrorism has no religion, no nationality, no race. Terrorism is terrorism.
President Barrow leaves for Riyadh on Sunday, where he will meet the CEO of Saudi Fund for Development (SFD) and will later sign a memorandum of understanding with the CEO of Al Bassam Organization on behalf of the First Lady's Foundation. On Monday, 28 June, President Barrow will inaugurate the Gambian embassy and an ambassador's residence in Riyadh before departing for Banjul on Tuesday, June 29. The Gambia is set to host the Organization of Islamic Cooperation's 15th Head of State and Government Summit in 2022. The country has identified 6 projects, among them a 50-kilometer road, a conference center, VIP hotel, and a lounge as part of hosting the summit, but only the conference center has been completed. However, construction of the $50 million 20 urban roads covering 50 kilometers expected to start some 3 months ago remains a mystery. With delay in the infrastructural work, the Gambia's chance of hosting the OIC summit is hanging on a thread. Reporting for iAfrica TV, this is Omar Ahmadu Toure.
The Gambia is set to host the OIC summit in Banjul next week, and President Barrow said, of course, Gambia is on course of hosting the event as it meets with the OIC officials in Mecca. Now, South African nationals have expressed concerns over the recent increase of price of food commodities and transport fares in the country. The Rainbow Nation last month registered its highest inflation rate since November 2018 amid the impact of the COVID-19 global pandemic. However, some economists believed the high surge of cost of living in South Africa was imminent. Here's more details of that in this report.
Tanzania's warning is being issued with cases on the rise in East Africa. The health ministry is concerned about growing infection rates in all neighboring countries.
Hii ni kutokana na taarifa za ufuatiliaji.
We decided this due to the surveillance that the ministry has done and the interactions between our people and neighboring countries, as well as the global community.
Duniani katika shughuli za kijamii na kiuchumi.
This is the third time the country has issued a warning over the risk of a third wave of the virus. Authorities have been asked to enforce wearing of masks, hand washing, and the use of sanitizers.
Vaaji sahihi.
We want citizens to wear masks properly. Furthermore, masks should be worn in all public places or areas with many people.
Maambukizi.
Tanzania stopped publishing COVID-19 data in April of 2020. After President Magufuli's death early this year, newly appointed President Samia Hassan started a change in handling COVID-19 infections, including admitting its presence. Now, the country is waiting for vaccines. President Hassan formed an expert committee to evaluate the nation's COVID-19 response in early April. The country has now submitted its vaccine request form at the World Health Organization and is currently preparing a vaccination deployment plan.
I believe this wave will pass. The very first one was the most terrifying, but it passed. So even this third wave will pass. I believe it won't be so strong. I hear it in neighboring countries, but here God is still with us.
Tanzania is one of the last countries on the African continent to sign up for free vaccines.
Well, of course, there was a report on the situation of COVID-19 cases in Tanzania, and we hopefully will come back to the South Africa report later on. But elsewhere, ahead of the commemoration of marking the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Drug Trafficking, Gambia's Minister for Interior said the country is highly stable in terms of drug trafficking. However, in January of this year, the Drug Law Enforcement Agency intercepted 3 tons of cocaine at the Gambia seaport. Juldenjai Suare has more details of that in this story.
The theme for this year's commemoration is Share Facts on Drugs, Save Lives. World Drug Day is a day that is used to strengthen action and cooperation in achieving the goal of a world free of drug abuse, and highlights the dangers of drug use and its trade, and mobilize public support in the fight against drugs. On this day, awareness raising is undertaken by anti-narcotic agencies, civil society organizations, and individuals all over the world on the effects of drugs and its ramifications on nations. Gambia's Minister for Interior said, despite government efforts in creating awareness, there seemed to be a lot of misinformation and stereotype perpetrated by some individuals and groups against the country on drug-related matters.
All of these are clearly intended to put the government in a poor light and cloud its sincere and remarkable efforts in fighting against drugs. This makes it even more critical to mobilize against misinformation and share facts. The fight against drug abuse and trafficking is a shared and common responsibility.
Young people are mostly affected by this endemic. Statistics from the country's only psychiatric hospital indicated that about 60% of their patients admitted at the hospital are on induced psychosis. Minister Sonko attributed the high youth involvement in drugs to misinformation, saying it has cost the lives of many people who fell victims to drugs. As a transit state in the transnational trade, Gambia is a significant transshipment point for cocaine trafficked from South America to European markets, making it liable for cocaine trafficking in Africa. In recent years, huge volumes of cocaine shipped by sea and air have been seized by the Gambian authorities. Despite all this, Yankuba Sonko maintained that Gambia is highly stable in terms of drug trafficking.
Based on available and variable evidence, the Gambia is highly stable in terms of drug trafficking. There is continued and sustained effort in countering the world drug problem by implementing a strong and credible drug interdiction regime. The government of the Gambia, therefore, assures all Gambians and partners that this country is far from being a narcotic state, as there are clear evidence and that legitimate state institutions are not penetrated or influenced by the wealth and power of drug traffickers.
Honorable Sonko reiterated that Gambia is and will remain a hostile ground for drug traffickers. For iAfrica News, Julde Suare.
Gambia remains a stable country in terms of drug trafficking, according to the Interior Minister. Now, as the clock ticks towards December 4, 2021, political parties are on the run with rallies on how to convince Gambians to vote for them. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambian Forces have strictly warned his soldiers to stay away from politics or campaign activities as long as they are serving in uniform. CDS made this remark during his nationwide tour to military deployment across the country. Our reporter, Mariama Cham, who has been with the CDS, tells us more of that in this report.
During the reign of former President Jammeh, revelations from the TRRC have shown how he manipulated the security forces, especially the army, into gross human rights violations. Consequently, many look at the army as a stooge and an agent of destruction by former President Jammeh. In order to maintain its credibility and to regain trust from the public, the Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Yakuba A. Dramé, has strictly prohibited his men and women in uniform to stay away from political activities or face the music.
I will not partake in politics. If I cannot participate in politics, what would cause you to participate in politics? Let's stay away from politics. Let's not get ourselves involved in politics. And that is the only way, in my opinion, and that is a view shared by every member of the armed forces, we can remain a credible force. Anytime we go outside our parameters to engage ourselves in politics, it's a recipe for disaster. Stay away from politics. If anybody infringes this rule, the issue is not going to be taken lightly.
The army boss further reiterates the rights of his men to acquire a voter's card. But what the command will not accept is a personnel joining political activity, as it is forbidden.
Perhaps, if I may emphasize, as serving members of the armed forces, you equally have the right, like any other Gambian, to obtain a voter's card. But what we cannot accept, for you to join a political wagon, to openly, without due adherence to procedures, partake in political campaigning, or take the stage when the political parties, they have whatever rally, you want to be part of the process. It's a no-go area.
CDS Dramé further advises the defense force to safeguard the peace in the country, adding that tribal sentiments will lead to dangerous precedents.
Let's jealously safeguard the peace. The peace is being threatened as a result of what? Politics and tribal sentiments. That's the biggest gift we have as a nation, the peace and tranquility, the friendliness, how receptive Gambians are. It's been threatened by these tribal sentiments, people insulting one another, people trying to form what we call enclaves, giving it identity. These tribes, this tribe is a dangerous precedent. That should not be allowed, and that should be condemned.
Lieutenant General Yakuba A. Dramé and his entourage will proceed with the tour in the West Coast region and the Greater Banjul area on Monday, as he completed the first leg on Friday in rural Gambia. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Mariama Cham.
Gambia's Chief of Defense Staff there, Lieutenant General Yakuba Dramé, advising the army to stay away from politics ahead of the December 2021 presidential elections. And from the report there by Maria Macham, we will now take a break and come back shortly with the remaining of the story. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
The pride we take in our brand, the work we put into constantly change the landscape and elevate real estate in the Gambia, it's compared to none. From inception, our goal was to add value to the beautiful Gambian landscape. That's why we are proud innovators of community estates. Kololi Sands is an exceptional piece of work, tailored for ultimate convenience and luxury, to bring you an element of finesse that is rare but unique in its own. This is also our pride and joy, and we welcome you to the exquisite beauty right here in Kololi and right here on the waterfront. Kololi Sands, feel the ocean breeze at your doorstep.
Welcome back, and once again, many thanks for joining us. And now to the rest of the stories. The World Health Organization's Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has said concerns over the COVID-19 new Delta variant. The variant, according to the WHO boss, is the most transmissible than those that have been noticed in or at least 85 countries. The new variant is said to be spreading rapidly among unvaccinated populations. The CISA tells us more of that in this report.
The Delta variant has been linked to a resurgence of COVID-19 cases in continents such as Asia and the United States, which has raised concern among health officials. According to the World Health Organization Director General, the variant remains a challenge with evidence suggesting it may reduce vaccine protection against infection and disease. Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says, despite resurgence in cases of the variant, some countries ease public health social measures.
I know that globally there is currently a lot of concern about the Delta variant, and WHO is concerned about it too. Delta is the most transmissible of the variants identified so far, has been identified in at least 85 countries, and is spreading rapidly among unvaccinated populations. As some countries ease public health and social measures, we're starting to see increases in transmission around the world. More cases means more hospitalizations, further stretching health workers and health systems, which increases the risk of death.
WHO boss says new variants are expected to be reported as far as transmission of the virus continues, thus urging countries to use every tool at their disposal to prevent transmission.
As we have said, new variants are expected and will continue to be reported. That's what viruses do. They evolve. But we can prevent the emergence of variants by preventing transmission. It's quite simple. More transmission, more variants. Less transmission, less variants. That makes it even more urgent that we use all the tools at our disposal to prevent transmission. The tailored and consistent use of public health and social measures in combination with equitable vaccination. This is why WHO has been saying for at least a year that vaccines must be distributed equitably to protect health workers and the most vulnerable.
Responding to a question on the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines in low-income countries, Senior Advisor to the Director General, Dr. Bruce says, WHO received 0 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine from COVAX this month.
vaccine. The biggest problem these countries face, and I have to say I get a little bit frustrated with the big focus on the delivery challenge countries will have, because we have a supply challenge. You know, we have, through COVAX this month, 0 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine, 0 doses of SII vaccine, 0 doses of J&J vaccine. And I'm worried about supply. You know, there's a theory of constraints. You deal with them in the order in which you face them, and countries do not have products. And
the Delta variant of COVID-19, first identified in India, has been detected in 85 countries and continues to spread rapidly. Fears that it is poised to become the dominant strain worldwide. According to WHO officials, some reports have found that it also causes more severe symptoms, but more research is needed to confirm those conclusions. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Daisy Se.
New COVID-19 variants continue to emerge in different countries as the world intensifies efforts to combat against the global COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's go back to the South Africa story, because South African citizens have expressed concern over the recent increase of price of food, commodities and transport fares in the country. The Rainbow Nation last month registered its highest inflation rate since November 2018 amid the impact of the COVID-19 global pandemic. However, some economists believe the high surge of cost of living in South Africa was imminent. Here's more details of that in this report.
It's the highest reading since November 2018, but it didn't come as a complete surprise. Some economists say the annual inflation rate came in line with expectations. That's because it's coming off a low base. Oil prices crashed this time last year as governments around the world imposed lockdowns, forcing businesses to close and restricting the movement of people. Everything measured in the basket of goods rose in May. Food and transport costs were the main drivers.
Food, we've had a couple of outliers as well, the tomato shortages and some of the fruit and veggie shortages and all the rain and everything else. I think one more thing that we just have to take into consideration is that the very low base from which we are coming.
While South Africans struggle to get back into work mode as the economy reopens, they also have to deal with the rising cost of living. Transport was the biggest driver in these latest inflation figures, and that's because petrol prices have gone up almost 42% since last year. Food and non-alcoholic beverages came in 6.7% higher, while the cost of transport rose 15.3% year-on-year in May. Fuel costs went up 37% from 21% in April. Even the price of cooking oil rose significantly, up 8.5% since April, but 30% up since last year.
Everything is up, even like the taxes now. It's difficult to get to work or to wherever you're going because the transport has gone up, the petrol has gone up, so it's difficult to make the ends meet.
Pretty much everything has gone up these days, transport-wise, food cost and everything.
These days you can't do groceries with less than 2,000 rands, for an example, and you still have to pay other bills like rent, water. Electricity is expensive. It doesn't last long like in the olden days.
It's unlikely to get any easier as this number could push the Reserve Bank to hike rates. At 5.2%, the inflation rate has now gone beyond the midpoint of the bank's target band of 3 to 6%.
Need higher interest rates in South Africa to attract scarce capital, not just in the short term to support the currency, but also in the longer term to support the economic growth. I'm just hoping they might give us 2 or 3 more months of breathing room, especially for the consumer that we know is still under a lot of pressure.
The Reserve Bank cut rates by 300 basis points last year and said it would keep the rate low as long as inflation remained at a moderate level. With consumer inflation now over 5%, it's unlikely that the bank can delay a rate hike any longer.
The recent increase of price of food commodities in South Africa raises concerns among South Africans. Well, with that report there, we finally bring this news edition to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, you can visit on our website on iafrica.tv. But for now, many thanks for the privilege of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and do have a very pleasant night. Bye for now.